My wife excused her male best friend's rude jokes, saying, "That's just his British sense of humor." I said, "Ah, I see." So I accidentally included her friend's wife in a group chat, sharing his hilarious jokes about her. Now he's explaining his humor to a divorce lawyer. My wife, Clara, has a blind spot. It's shaped exactly like her male best friend, Julian. They've been friends since she did a semester abroad in London a decade ago, and in her eyes, Julian can do no wrong. To me, he's always been about as pleasant as a pebble in your shoe. He's arrogant, condescending, and possesses a brand of humor that isn't just unfunny, but actively corrosive. He specializes in what I call drive-by insults. He'll make a cutting remark about someone's appearance, their job, or their spouse, and then immediately laugh it off as a joke. If anyone looks uncomfortable, Clara will jump in with her favorite catchphrase, delivered with a knowing little laugh. "Oh, you just have to get used to Julian. That's just his very British sense of humor." Ah, yes, the famous British sense of humor. As far as I can tell, this is a magical category of comedy that excuses you from being a decent human being. For years I've put up with it. I've endured his little jabs about my quaint American optimism and his critiques of my taste in everything from wine to television. I tolerated it because I love Clara, and Julian, despite living in our city now, was mostly a peripheral character. But recently, his humor has taken a darker turn. He's become particularly fond of making jokes at the expense of his own wife, Amelia. Amelia is a genuinely sweet person, a quiet, kind woman who seems totally devoted to him. She is also, conveniently, never around when Julian decides to perform his stand-up routine for me and Clara. Last weekend was the breaking point. We had Julian over for dinner. Amelia was out of town visiting her sister. We were having a drink in the living room when Julian started telling a story about a disastrous dinner party they had hosted. He concluded the story by saying, "And of course, the whole thing was a nightmare because Amelia, bless her heart, has all the culinary flair of a badger in a blender. I'm fairly certain her signature dish is burnt water." He roared with laughter. Clara giggled along, shooting me a look that said, "See? Isn't he a riot?" I didn't laugh. I just looked at him and said, "That's a pretty rough thing to say about your wife." Julian's smile tightened. "Lighten up, mate," he said. "It's a joke. She knows I'm only kidding." Clara jumped in immediately. "Honestly, Mark, that's just his British sense of humor. It's edgier than what we're used to. You can't take it so seriously." Edgier. That's what she called it. Not cruel, not disrespectful, edgy. And in that moment, as I watched my wife defend another man for mocking his own wife, something in my head didn't just snap. It became crystal clear, illuminated by a kind of cold, satirical light. I looked at Clara, smiled politely, and said the words that would set everything in motion. "Ah, I see. The problem is, Julian isn't just a verbal comedian. He's also a prolific texter. For the last year, he's had a group chat with me and Clara, where he occasionally shares his hilarious thoughts. Most of it is boring, but sprinkled throughout are these little nuggets of pure nastiness, usually aimed at Amelia. I never deleted the chat. I don't know why. Maybe on some level, I knew I was collecting evidence. After he left that night, I scrolled through the chat history. It was a goldmine of edgy British humor. There was one from last month. "Good Lord, Amelia is trying on dresses for the Henderson wedding. She's asking for my opinion. It's like asking which suitcase you'd prefer to take on holiday. Both are bulky and difficult to manage." And another from a few months back. "Spent the afternoon with Amelia's parents. I now understand her personality so much better. It's a cry for help, translated through beige wallpaper and boiled vegetables." My personal favorite was a photo he sent of a ridiculously expensive sports car with the caption, "My midlife crisis is going to be epic. Amelia's will probably be a subscription to a new brand of tea. We are not the same." Reading them all together, it wasn't edgy humor. It was a pattern of profound disrespect. And Clara had seen every single one of these messages and had never once said a thing. A plan began to form in my mind. It was simple, elegant, and best of all, it could be framed as a complete and total accident. I couldn't just forward these texts to Amelia. That would be too direct, too confrontational. No, the delivery had to have plausible deniability. I needed to let Julian's own words, his own brilliant humor, do the work for me. The perfect opportunity was right around the corner. Clara's birthday is next month. I decided I would create a new group chat to plan a surprise party for her. This would give me the perfect excuse to add a few of our mutual friends. It would also give me the perfect excuse to accidentally add the wrong person. You see, we have a friend named Amy, and then there is Julian's wife, Amelia. Their names look awfully similar in a contact list, don't they? So I created a new group chat. I named it Clara's Surprise B-Day Bash. I added our friends Dave and Sarah. I added Clara's sister. And then I scrolled through my contacts and, with surgical precision, I added Amelia, not Amy. I let the chat sit for an hour with just a few preliminary messages about potential dates. Then I prepared my masterpiece. I screenshotted 5 of Julian's most hilarious texts about Amelia. I scrolled back up to the top of our new party planning chat, took a deep breath, and posted the screenshots. I followed it up with a message, typed out to look like I was speaking only to our inner circle. I wrote, "Hey guys, speaking of laughs for Clara's birthday, I was just scrolling through my old chats with Julian. The man is a comedic genius. This stuff is just too funny not to share. Classic British wit." Then I put my phone down on the table, face up. I poured myself a drink, and I waited for the digital explosion I knew was coming. Update 1. The aftermath of my unfortunate mistake was more immediate and more spectacular than I could have ever hoped for. It took less than 60 seconds for the first reply to appear in the Clara's Surprise B-Day Bash group chat. It was from Amelia. Her message was simple and chilling. "I don't understand. Mark, are these messages real?" Before I could even formulate my horrified response, Clara's message came through, a frantic burst of text. "Mark, what are you doing? Delete this right now. This is the wrong chat. Amelia is in here." The all caps really sold the panic. It was beautiful. It was time for my performance. I quickly typed back, "Oh my God. Oh no. Amelia, I am so sorry. I thought I was adding our friend Amy. This is mortifying. I was just trying to share a private joke. Please ignore those." Of course, you can't unring a bell, and you certainly can't unsee a screenshot of your husband comparing you to a bulky suitcase. The group chat went silent. It was a heavy, virtual silence, pregnant with doom. Amelia didn't reply again. She just quietly left the group. That was far more terrifying than any angry response could have been. Then my phone started to ring. It was Clara. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, a call from Julian. I ignored that one too. Then a string of texts from Clara, each more frantic than the last. "Pick up the phone, Mark. You did this on purpose. I know you did. Amelia won't answer her phone. Julian is panicking. This is all your fault." I let them stew for a good 20 minutes. I finished my drink, enjoying the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I called Clara back, adopting my most apologetic and flustered tone. "Clara, honey, I am so sorry," I began. "I feel absolutely terrible. It was an honest mistake. I just must have clicked the wrong name. I can't believe I did that." She wasn't buying it, not for a second. "Don't you dare play dumb with me, Mark," she screamed into the phone. "You've always hated Julian. You did this to ruin our friendship." Notice, her immediate concern was not for the woman who had just been brutally humiliated, nor was it for the fact that her best friend was a monster. Her concern was for her friendship with that monster. This was the validation I needed. "Ruin your friendship?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Why would it do that? They were just jokes. It's just his British sense of humor, remember? The stuff you said was edgy. I'm sure Amelia will understand that. He was only kidding." I could almost hear her brain short-circuiting as I threw her own pathetic excuse back in her face. "It's different when she sees it like that," she stammered. "It's out of context." "What context is required for the suitcase joke?" I asked innocently. "Is there a specific British historical event I'm missing that makes it funny?" She hung up on me. Julian called again, and this time I answered. He was a wreck. The arrogant, witty charmer was gone, replaced by a panicked, whining man-child. "Mark, what have you done? Amelia saw the texts. She's not speaking to me. You need to call her and tell her it was a prank, a joke, anything." "A prank?" I replied, my voice cold now. "I thought it was just your famous humor. I was paying you a compliment, mate. I was showing our friends how hilarious you are. I don't see what the problem is. Surely your wife, of all people, appreciates your comedic genius." "You absolute," he started, but I cut him off. "You should probably go talk to your wife, Julian. I'm sure you can explain the nuance of your humor to her. Good luck." I hung up. Clara got home about an hour later. Her face was pale and her eyes were red. The fight was epic. She accused me of being a petty, jealous, and manipulative person who couldn't handle a little banter. She demanded that I go over to their house, apologize to both Julian and Amelia, and fix what I had done. "There's nothing to fix, Clara," I said calmly, leaning against the kitchen counter while she paced like a caged animal. "According to you, Julian did nothing wrong. He just told a few edgy jokes. The only mistake that happened here was a clerical error on my part, a technological slip-up. Are you saying Julian's entire persona can be dismantled by a single administrative blunder?" "You are twisting my words," she yelled. "No," I said, my voice dropping to a serious tone for the first time. "I'm not. I'm holding them up for you to see. For years, you have enabled his cruelty and called it culture. You have prioritized his ego over my comfort, and more importantly, over the dignity of his own wife. You don't get to be angry at me because the lights just got turned on and the thing you were defending looks ugly." She stared at me, her mouth agape. She had no defense because she knew I was right. But admitting that would mean admitting she was wrong, and that was not something Clara was capable of doing. That night, she slept in the guest room. The house is quiet now, but the line has been drawn. She chose to stand with him, and I chose to stand with reality. I don't know what's going to happen to our marriage, but I know I'm not the one who broke it. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since the group chat incident, and the fallout has been a fascinating case study in cause and effect. The tremors from my little administrative error have shaken the foundations of 2 households. The first and most significant consequence, of course, landed on Julian. I got the story in pieces from mutual friends, the ones I had included in the original, untainted party planning chat. Amelia, after leaving the group chat, apparently turned off her phone for several hours. When she turned it back on, she didn't call Julian or Clara. She called her sister. She then calmly packed a bag, and when Julian got home from whatever panicked errand he was on, she was sitting on the sofa with her suitcase next to her. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. According to the story, she just looked at him with dead eyes and said, "I've received some clarity on our marriage, Julian. I'll be staying with my sister. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." And he did. Within a week, he had been served with divorce papers. Amelia, the quiet, sweet woman he thought he could mock without consequence, had downloaded the group chat history. The screenshots I had accidentally posted were now Exhibit A in a formal legal proceeding. His edgy British humor was being itemized and analyzed by people who bill by the hour. Meanwhile, my own home life had become a silent, icy war. Clara and I were living like roommates who despised each other. She moved fully into the guest room, and we only communicated via terse, necessary text messages. Her anger at me hadn't subsided, it had solidified. In her mind, the villain of this story was still me. The destruction of Julian's marriage was my fault, not the fault of the man who actively disrespected his wife for years. Then came the attempts to retaliate. Since Clara had no legal or financial leverage over me, she tried to use social and emotional leverage. She went on a campaign, running to her family and a few of her closest friends, spinning a carefully edited narrative. She told them that I had grown jealous of her friendship with Julian. And in a fit of passive-aggressive rage, I had deliberately engineered a situation to destroy his marriage. She painted me as a petty, controlling husband who couldn't handle cultural differences in humor. Her mother called me, lecturing me about the sanctity of marriage and how I should be supporting Clara and her friendships, not tearing them down. I listened patiently before saying, "Would you be proud if your husband told a room full of people that you had the culinary flair of a badger in a blender?" There was a stunned silence, and the conversation ended shortly after. The next tactic was financial. It was as clumsy as it was predictable. Julian, now facing the massive expense of a divorce, apparently put a bug in Clara's ear. One evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Mark," she said, her arms crossed, "we need to talk about finances." She proceeded to tell me that she felt she had been shouldering an unfair burden in our marriage. She claimed that Julian was considering asking me to repay a loan from years ago. It was a complete fabrication. Years ago, the three of us went on a weekend trip, and Julian had paid for a dinner with his credit card because the small restaurant didn't take mine. I had paid him back in cash the very next day. Now, they were trying to twist that into some kind of outstanding debt. She also said that she was feeling emotionally traumatized by the hostile environment I had created in our home, and she felt it was only fair that I start paying for her therapy sessions. I just stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. They were trying to make me pay for the consequences of their own actions. "No," I said simply. "No? What do you mean no?" she sputtered. "I mean no," I repeated calmly. "There is no loan, Julian knows it, and you know it. And I will not be paying for your therapy, Clara. You are not traumatized by me. You are traumatized by the fact that your worldview, where your friend's bad behavior has no consequences, has been shattered. That's a you problem." I then delivered the final blow. "However, since you've brought up the topic of finances and the state of our marriage, perhaps you're right. It is time we talked about them. I've been thinking a lot this past week. I suggest we each contact our own lawyers and discuss our assets. I think that's the most logical next step, don't you?" The color drained from her face. She knew, as well as I did, that I was the primary earner and that our house and the majority of our investments were assets I held prior to our marriage. Bringing lawyers into our equation would be financially devastating, but not for me. She backed down immediately, stammering that maybe she was being too emotional. But the line had been crossed. She had colluded with her friend to try and extort money from me. She had made her final choice, and I knew what I had to do. Final update. It has been 6 months since I posted my last update, and the comedy of errors that was Julian's life, and by extension my own marriage, has reached its final punchline. Let's start with Julian. His divorce did not go well. That's like saying a skydiver's parachute failing to open is a minor inconvenience. It was a complete and utter disaster for him. Amelia, empowered by the undeniable proof of his contempt for her, was relentless. Her lawyer used the text messages to argue for a settlement that accounted for emotional cruelty. It wasn't just about dividing assets anymore. It was about compensation for years of being the butt of his private, demeaning jokes. Every hilarious comment was picked apart in legal documents. The joke about her cooking, her parents, her clothing choices. It all formed a mosaic of disrespect that no judge found amusing. The grapevine told me that during a deposition, Julian was actually asked to explain the comedic intention behind the bulky suitcase comment. He reportedly tried to fall back on the "it's a British thing" defense, and the opposing lawyer drily asked if he could cite the specific region of the United Kingdom where spousal mockery was considered a cultural treasure. In the end, he lost a significant portion of his assets. Amelia got the house and a very favorable settlement. He is now reportedly living in a small, overpriced apartment and is a far less cheerful person. His wit has apparently abandoned him now that it comes with a price tag. Now on to Clara. After our conversation about lawyers, she seemed to realize the precariousness of her position. She made a few half-hearted attempts at a reconciliation. She would leave articles on the counter about love languages or suggest we go to marriage counseling. But she never once offered a genuine apology. She never once admitted that what Julian did was wrong or that her defense of him was a betrayal of me. Her attempts at fixing things were all about restoring her own comfort, not about rebuilding our trust. It was too little, too late. I had seen who she was. I couldn't live with a person whose moral compass was so fundamentally broken that she would side with a cruel friend over her own husband. I couldn't respect a person who only started to reconsider her position when she realized it might cost her money. So I followed through on my own suggestion. I hired a lawyer and I filed for divorce. The process was remarkably clean and swift. Our prenuptial agreement, which I had insisted on years ago, held up perfectly. Our assets were divided exactly as stipulated. She was not entitled to my premarital assets, which included the house. She left with the money she came into the marriage with, plus a small portion of our shared savings. She was shocked, apparently believing that the prenup was just a formality that wouldn't hold up. She was wrong. She had to move out of the house and find her own place. Her friendship with Julian is, by all accounts, strained. It's hard to maintain a chummy friendship when you're both staring into the financial and personal abyss you dug for each other. She lost her husband, her comfortable lifestyle, and her hilarious best friend was now just a bitter, divorced man. All because she couldn't bring herself to say, "Hey, that's not funny, you should respect your wife." I am now officially divorced. The house is quiet, but it's a peaceful quiet. It's my quiet. I've reconnected with friends who I had drifted away from, friends who found Julian as tiresome as I did. I feel lighter. The funniest part of this whole ordeal is thinking about the phrase, British sense of humor. It was the magic wand Clara waved to make all the ugliness disappear. But the thing about magic is, it's not real. What's real is consequences. I didn't seek revenge in a fit of anger. I just took the excuse she gave me, took the jokes he told, and held them up to the light. It turns out they weren't funny at all, and the look on Julian's face when he realized his humor was about to be explained to a divorce lawyer? Now that, my friends, was a punchline.